Hey guys, this is Jason. I'm back reviewing another TV show. I haven't done one of those in a while, and this one is going to be for a Marvel show. And when you look at the movies from Marvel from the 2010s, they've made some of the best from that time, where they've made some films and shows that a lot of people can watch and like the characters and have a fun time watching them. But unfortunately, nowadays, when it comes to Marvel in the 2020s, they're not like that because most of their films and shows in today's time have become big disappointments, with some exceptions, of course. And they've made some films in recent years that have either been a big disappointment and haven't lived up to people's expectations, and some shows that feel rushed and didn't have a lot of time to develop the story or the characters and having very rushed finales. But we're not going to talk about that stuff because in this video we're going to be talking about one of the best Marvel shows, and in my opinion it's the best Marvel show, because in 2015 Netflix and Marvel released a TV show that was loved by a lot of people for being dark and serious and having great characters and great action sequences. And it's also from the MCU, which, if you're one of those people that hates the MCU because you think they play things safe, and you would be right, but that's not always true. There are times when Marvel can do some serious stuff and show some more blood and violence, like Deadpool and Wolverine, for instance. Another great example of doing that I'm going to be talking about for this video is Daredevil, created by Goddard, and it is based off the comics made by Frank Miller, and it is about Matt Murdock, played by Charlie Cox, who, after going through a horrible accident when he was a kid, ended up blinding him, but that accident gave him the ability to sense and hear things, where he can hear a heartbeat from someone to tell if that person's lying or not, and hear traffic from a mile away. He is both a blind lawyer by day and a crime fighter by night, where he takes down a bunch of criminals that work for Wilson Fisk. And in case you're wondering, yes, I do consider Daredevil to be a part of the MCU, not just the fact that Charlie Cox appeared in Spider-Man No Way Home, and Vincent D'Onofrio also appeared in Hawkeye, but they also leave like little hints to the first Avengers film, where they mention the Battle of New York City being the incident, and they also mention Captain America at one point. So yeah, I do consider both Daredevil and the other Marvel Netflix shows to be canon to the MCU, at least in my mind. And I've been wanting to review this show for a while, because with Daredevil Born Again coming to Disney Plus in March, I found myself itching to rewatch the original series that was on Netflix at the time, and I decided to make separate videos for all 3 seasons of Daredevil. So this video is only going to be for the first season, the next video is going to be for the second season, and the third is going to be for the third season, so look out for reviews of those coming out soon. And when this show came out on Netflix, it did really well for both critics and audiences, where not only it got 2 more seasons, but also got a lot more Marvel shows coming out, like Jessica Jones, that ended up being really good as well. Luke Cage is a lot of fun. Iron Fist, not really. It has some redeeming moments, but it's not a good show. They also had a team-up show called The Defenders, which was pretty good, and of course they made a Punisher series with John Bernthal, which I also thought was pretty good. But for me, this one remains the best Marvel show from Netflix, because this show did so well at making this world feel dark and gritty, and making the characters feel more down to earth and realistic with real problems. I learned a little bit about Daredevil growing up. I first saw him in the 90s animated Spider-Man series when I was a kid, and that was my first introduction to the Daredevil character. I've seen him in some of the video games I played, and I of course watched the Ben Affleck Daredevil film when I was 14, and I used to think that one was really good back then, until I got older and noticed a lot of problems. Like, for one, it has Colin Farrell being an over-the-top bullseye, the action sequences look like they came out of the Matrix and were done very poorly, and there are some unintentionally funny moments whenever Daredevil is jumping off of a building and his legs are perfectly fine. No broken bones, no bruises, he can just walk perfectly okay and nothing happened. But this show is nothing like that. It takes itself very seriously, and when someone gets hurt in a fight, you see a lot of scars and bruises on their bodies, in particular just from Matt when he's fighting bad guys. In regards to the other Marvel shows we've gotten over the years, This is one of the more violent Marvel shows I have seen. Like, this show doesn't shy away from some of the violent moments, in particular, one scene involving a car door, which that is brutal. But it also has some good lighthearted moments for the characters where they do let out some humor, and it's not the kind where they make a serious moment that's supposed to be tragic and emotional and then it just gets ruined with a joke. This show's not like that, because it has more the natural kind when someone pops a joke that's supposed to be funny and it actually works and it doesn't feel forced, it feels natural. And another thing that makes this show great and one of my favorites is that this show is more character driven because it focuses on the characters dealing with problems more so than the superhero stuff when Matt is in full costume, where you get to learn more about Matt Murdock and his childhood and the problems he had to deal with when he was going blind and how he was able to learn to control his abilities. And when you start to learn more about his life and understand why he's doing this to help all of Hell's Kitchen, it definitely makes him a more interesting character and one of the more sympathetic characters throughout the show. And there are other characters I do want to talk about, but we're gonna save those for later, because right now I do also want to talk about the action, because even though most of the show is about characters talking about what's going on with Wilson Fisk and what's going on in Hell's Kitchen, it still manages to give us great action sequences that are very well shot and well filmed, making the action look more brutal and gritty. It's definitely some of the best action sequences I have seen in the MCU, and it's one of the best overall. And there are still some great shots for when the action happens, in particular the very popular one-take hallway fight scene from episode 2, where it makes you feel like you are witnessing a real fight scene happening right in front of you. When it comes to the action in the show, it does not disappoint. Now, like I said earlier, this show is based off of a series of comic books that were written by Frank Miller, and if you've read any of Frank Miller's comics, then you can clearly see the inspiration that this show has from them. Like, it's the kind where they were being very faithful, like Matt's black suit that he wears in most of season 1 and in some of the imagery as well. But another thing that I love about this show is that this is one of those shows that does not play it safe. It doesn't feel like the characters are in a safe environment, because they live in a place where some of those characters could die. And it can even happen to some characters that you might like in the show if you ever decide to watch it. I'm not going to get into spoilers, don't worry, but there are going to be some characters that you are going to like, but then the show is going to say, well, too bad if you like that character or not, that character is unfortunately gonna die, and that happens quite a bit in this show. And it also gives the show more of an emotional punch when that happens, because when that happens, it definitely makes the characters feel like that anyone could die. And it definitely gets you to feel concerned about all the other characters that you do start to care for throughout this entire show, getting you worried on whether they're gonna live or not. Like, when you look at characters like Matt Murdock, you know he's the main character of the show, but you don't know if he's gonna live or not when he puts himself at risk, because he goes through some life-risking moments where a character like Wilson Fisk could kill him. Charlie Cox is fantastic as Matt Murdock. He makes the character likable and very sympathetic when you start to learn more about his backstory, where he's one of those characters that does unfortunately make a lot of mistakes along the way, and when he does make those mistakes, he feels bad about it, making him one of the more down-to-earth and sympathetic characters, not just in the show, but in the MCU as well. There's also two characters I do want to talk about that are fan favorites of mine. Like, there's Karen Page, played by Debera Ann Wool, and Matt's partner, Foggy Nelson, played by Elden Henson, where Foggy is the one that pops jokes every once in a while, and he's Matt Murdock's best friend, but he can also take things very seriously when you learn about what he's doing throughout the show and why his friendship with Matt is important to him. Then there's Karen Page, who starts out as a victim that was framed for a murder that she didn't do, but when Matt and Foggy find her and have her as a secretary after Matt hears her heartbeat for telling the truth, she tries to find out the real person that was involved with this murder that she got herself stuck into, and learns more about what's going on in Hell's Kitchen and who's behind all the criminals that are doing all this horrible stuff. These two characters for me are some of the best characters in the show, and to be honest, I can't imagine Daredevil without them, because they give the film both the humor and some of the emotion throughout the entire series, which I'm hoping that I'll still see in Daredevil Born Again. I'm hoping that we're still gonna get that in that show. You also have Rosario Dawson as Claire, a nurse that would help Matt whenever he gets cuts and bruises on him because she's a nurse from a hospital, and she would later appear in almost every Marvel Netflix show after Daredevil, and that's not a spoiler. You can look at some of the other Marvel shows that she's in where you can see the poster of her on them. But of course, you got the main villain of this show, Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who for me is the best character in the whole show, where he's bigger than a lot of his guards around him and having a short temper, and whenever a guard messes something up that he doesn't like, he doesn't hesitate to either beat up or kill one of his guards for doing that, making him a very terrifying and threatening villain. But what also makes him a great villain is his backstory, where you get to learn more about what his life was like in his childhood and how rough it was for him, where after you learn that backstory, you do get to feel some sympathy for him. But at the same time, you also feel terrified of him whenever he's gonna do something horrible. And Vincent D'Onofrio is phenomenal in this film. I do love him in other films like Men in Black and Full Metal Jacket, but this role in particular, he killed it as the Kingpin. And when you look at great casting choices for comic book characters like Christopher Reeve as Superman, or Wesley Snipes as Blade, or Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, or Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, for me the best casting choices in this show are Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock and Daredevil, and Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk and the Kingpin. So as you can tell, I do love Daredevil. It's one of my favorite Marvel shows of all time, and I love this season for having well-developed characters, a dark and gritty feel, action sequences that don't shy away from the violence. It has a great hero that you want to root for, and a great villain that you'd love to hate. If you have not seen Daredevil, I strongly recommend watching it. Unfortunately, it's not on Netflix anymore. It's on Disney Plus now, so you can watch it there if you have Disney Plus. Daredevil Season 1 gets an A. So guys, if you have seen all of Daredevil, what did you think about it? Do you think it's some of the best Marvel has done, or do you like the Ben Affleck film more? Because if you do, then okay, but that's fine. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video and you are excited to see me talk more about Daredevil, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.